Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank Podcast. I'm here with Chris.
Hello.
Chris, I got one topic for you, and I'm just going to do it because I have to do it. Ready? Aliens.
Okay.
I
What
don't.
about
I don't do it as good as that one guy does. He's been memed for the perfect alien things. I think it's with the hair and everything. But what is your? I guess you should explain what you really like, who you really are when it comes to like you have UFO researcher in your bio.
yeah, yeah. I am an experiencer too, but I don't want to be known for that. I mean, I guess I already am, but that's not my go-to thing. I'd rather be remembered as a researcher. As far as aliens, I'm not comfortable with calling them aliens because what I interacted with, you could call them what they looked like aliens, but I don't. They didn't tell me where they came from. They didn't show me on a star map. They came from Zeta Reticuli, so I'm not comfortable with that.
Mhm.
I like the term the others until they tell us what their intent is or where they're from. That's what I choose to call them.
I'm not comfortable with the grays or reptiles. That just seems very aggressive to me. And I feel like this is like an open topic that we don't really have a full disclosure. At least most of the population doesn't have full disclosure on. And it seems like you're already trying to make them aggressive before we even know what they are. Not you, just the world, I would say. Like the idea of that being a reptile or like Hillary Clinton's not a reptile, I don't think. I hope not. That'd be scary as shit. But I want more understanding when it comes to the concept of it. Now, if you want to talk about your experience first, just so we can get that out of the way, because I'm already thinking, like, what do you mean by experience, though? Like, I've heard Travis Walton, I think his name is, on Joe Rogan explain his. And I think my rationalization for anybody that's experienced any type of alien thing, you can't listen to it the first time and expect to have a full understanding. The first time I listened to Travis Walton, I thought he was lying. I thought he was a crazy person, but I've listened to him probably 30 times on that one episode. And I started to decipher something in my head, which is that if you see something unexplainable and you're trying to put it in terms for people to understand, it's going to be hard for you to be able to find words in our regular everyday life vocabulary that could fit those descriptions for things that you have seen. So if you feel comfortable telling me about
Yeah,
your
I'm
experience.
fine.
Okay.
It happened. The timing was either 1984 or 1985. The only reason why I say that is there's a book by Albert Rosales, The Humanoid Encounters, and the 80 to 84 book on the left hand side, there's a cute and cuddly gray. It's not the communion looking gray,
Hmm.
it's a more cute and cuddly guy. That's what I saw, for lack of better, or dealt with. But in any case, it was my grandmother's farm, either 84 or 85. And I would spend summers there, just hanging out. My mom would drop me off for 2 weeks at a time. And this was one of those times. And at her farmhouse, I did not have my own bedroom or bed. And I would sleep with her, not a big deal. But I grew up on this farm. It was a fun time, always get into trouble. But I was not a kid that would make stuff up, and especially something like this. So, long story short, I go to sleep with her, lay down, and all of a sudden I get this feeling to wake up. It's not so much a thought, it's just to wake up. So I did. And her door, if it was open, and it was open at that time, looked out, and you could go look, keep going. It would go through the living room if you're looking, and then it would end at the big bay window. And what I saw was a Apollo rocket landing in reverse, kind of like what Tesla does with SpaceX now. And I was like, well, that's weird, but I'm a 4 year old kid, so whatever. The next thing I remember, there was three grays, but the cute and cuddly guys, and they are surrounding the bed. And it's not scary. I'm not frightened. They don't communicate. The next memory I have is I'm outside of the where that bay window would generally be, and it's grass there, and it's at that time there was a line for clothes to dry, and I felt like I was being floated because I certainly wasn't walking. I could but it wasn't like floating like Peter Pan or anything like that. It was just I was being moved, and I slowly, we slowly move around to the backside of my grandma's farmhouse, and there's a cornfield onto the right hand side. It was so that tells me it would have been sometime in August or later, and the corn was fully grown, so it gets up there in height for people who don't know, and we're continuing to go down, and I could smell the earth. And when you grow up on a farm, and people who live on farms will say this, you could smell the earth. You could smell that smell, and it doesn't go away. Like I could smell it right now. I could just think about it. And then out of the cornfield comes a 7 foot, scary looking communion gray. And during that same time, there was an owl hooting, but that's all I remember. I don't remember being on board a ship. I don't remember talking to anybody. Nobody communicated to me. The next memory I have is I'm sitting at the edge of the bed, looking back out towards my grandmother's door wall or door jamb, looking straight to the bay window. And that same Apollo rocket that had landed reverse takes off, and that was it. The next morning, I asked my grandmother, "Did you see that rocket?" She's like, "Oh, Christopher, there was no rocket." So I just assumed it was a dream. But it took me a long time. It took till I was 36 to kind of realize that was not a dream. That really did occur. We can get into that, but it was, I didn't go through my life saying, "Oh, I was on a, or on a UFO, or I dealt with aliens." I didn't do that. So it was a weird thing. It wasn't like I said until I was 36 did I realize, oh, that was that one time, that weird thing that happened to me that probably was real. And then throughout my life I'd have dreams about that same occurrence, and it was really weird because they were so vivid, and it was like it definitely happened. So again, I'm not going to sit here and say you have to believe me, and then frankly I don't care if you do or don't. I don't care if anybody does. I know what happened. um, I've gone back there since. My aunt uncle still lived there. My uncle had just passed away this past April, but they still live there, and they've had some unique experiences, not with the others or UFOs, but just paranormal stuff that would happen at the house, which is interesting, especially that side of the house where the cornfield is. They've had some very interesting thing happen to them, both inside the house and outside. So
Do you think that it would have messed up your life? Because you talked about you were only 4, you chalked it up to a dream. Do you think if you were just older, a little bit older, that it probably would have messed up your life where you would have never forgotten about it and you would have been that kid that would have been ranting about being abducted? Because I feel like at 7 and 8 year old, that's all I would mention. I would never forget that. Like I would just keep talking about it over and over and over again. I would be the weird kid.
yeah, I will say this. The 80s were a time where parents did, and I don't know when you grew up, but at least for me, my dad took me to movies I probably shouldn't have been seeing. And
Yeah.
one of those movies that I saw was Communion in the theater. And for some reason, it invoked a fear into me that was not natural. Yeah, I'd seen scary movies before, but that scared the living shit out of me to the point where I literally could not sleep by myself. I had fear that they would come back and take me. And I was like, where's this coming from? Like, that's just a movie. Like, I was old enough at that point that I know it's a movie, it's not real. But for some reason, I had this irrational fear. To this day, I can't make it past basically the movie where the gray peeks out and from the door wall or door jam. I can't make it past that. I just can't. And like speaking to you right now about it, I've got goosebumps just thinking about that.
Do you think for instance, if you say this, you're either rejected by society or possibly picked up by some type of government person that might seem like you might actually have discovered some things, or you're locked in an insane asylum. That's not the case today. The case today is that you can be open as you want about this, and actually, you might get some things moving in the works when it comes to a UAP report. I think that's the only reason why is that people sparked up enough controversy and enough people got eyes on the Bob Lazar thing to realize this is a common thing, or this is something that's unexplainable that does occur, and we need to figure out what that is. And if that is aliens, we need to discover how. My thought to you is when you said you were sitting at the edge of the bed, do you think that they just spiritually or mentally, whatever, captured you instead of moving you physically? Like they took your spirit out of your body and then put you right back in there, like a form of astral projection in a way. But like when you sleep, for instance, you dream. You're not going to whatever your dream is. You're just
Mhm.
imagining that. Imagine if this thing took that essence of you that's in, because I believe your spirit is probably in your head. The only reason I say that is because most people, like a doctor could explain it to you, is that they could take anything out of your body. Dick Cheney, for instance, is probably the best example. He had a heart transplant. It's still him.
Mhm.
But if you mess with somebody's mind, you change that person forever. You alter them. So I think his spirit is in your head. I'm thinking if they somehow you saw something and they were able to, you said there were three friendly grays,
Well, I wouldn't say they're friendly. They were cute and cuddly. They weren't the
but then you met a
communion.
bigger one.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it was a very brief interaction. It just came out of the cornfield. It was taller than the corn,
That's
and
like
it was,
7 and 8 feet, man.
yeah, I know.
That's what I'm saying. It's like maybe he's the lead. That's what I start thinking of is he's the like the leader of the whatever that vessel that came
I,
down there.
I couldn't even begin to tell you. I mean, that's speculation. I don't know. But your idea, maybe. I don't know. I really don't know. I've had since then nothing dramatic like that. However, since the pandemic in 2020, my daughter and I, here where we live currently in Michigan, uh, stuff has been really wacky with her and me to the point where there will be lights following her from her room with her, walking into our bedroom, and we have a couch in the bedroom, and she'll lay down, and I'll see the light above her. There's been shadow figures in our house. We had one instance a couple, I don't know, 2 months ago, where we went garage sailing, and then I picked up this UFO toy that basically jettisons these little discs out, and you catch them. And there's no batteries in this thing. The person that I bought it from, like, there's no batteries. You're gonna have to buy batteries. I'm like, okay. I thought it'd be fun for my daughter and my son to play with. It's just silly. I mean, it's whatever. And one day I'm talking on the phone with a fellow researcher, and next thing you know, my daughter comes to me. He's like, "Dad, there's a noise coming out of the garage. Like, what is this?" And I was like, "What? Like, whatever." I'm like, I kind of ignored her the first time. She's like, "Dad, you need to come." So I got off the phone, like took my ear off the phone from the person I'm talking to, and I listened. And sure enough, I could hear something going on in the garage. Now that has to be pretty loud in order to go through the walls and stuff. So we go, and I'm still on the phone with this researcher. I go and open the door, and this thing is making a noise, beeps and boops and crazy noises. There's no batteries in this thing, and it's making all this noise. And I go and I touch it, and it stops. It's so strange. That's that same moment. The researcher and I were like, "All right, we'll talk later." I decided I'll take a series of photos of the box this thing came in. One photo came out crystal clear. The other photo, and I'm holding my phone stable. It's not like I've got issues like that. And the next photo is blurry as all get out. Like it's so blurry you could barely make anything out. It's really strange. So I don't know. I've had another occurrence back in 2016 where I was about to go to a UFO conference here in Michigan, and this voice entered my mind that's not my own and said, "If you go to this conference, we will no longer interact with you." And I was like, whatever. And I went. Uh, I recant this story to Grant Cameron because I went and met Grant at that time, and when he had me on his show, he was like, "Why didn't you tell me that when you met me?" I'm like, "Grant, that's the first time I ever would have met you. That's kind of strange and kind of weird. You're gonna think I'm crazy. So no, I'm not. Didn't want to tell you." But he's like, you should have. That was amazing. I'm like, well, I don't know what to make of it. But yeah, there's been weird occurrences that have happened to my daughter and myself since the pandemic. And some people would say that's stress related. I do find there's some research to back that up. I don't know why, but but I have not seen any more grays, not tall ones or short ones or anything like that. Nor has my daughter. They're just always been balls of light. I've asked my daughter a few times, "Are you scared?" She said no. However, there has been times where I've heard her scream, and then she'll run to our room and lay on the couch, and that light will follow her. My wife caught wind of this, and she's very religious. She does not want to believe any of this. However, she recognizes that, like, I had something happen to me back in the day. I didn't tell her. I was married with her for 5 years before I told her that this had happened. So I held it close to my vest. I did not want to share this with people. I didn't want to share it with her. And then I had found out some information from other UFO researchers that the name Christopher or Christoph, permutations of Chris, tend to have, for whatever reason, this phenomenon deal with them. It's weird. I can't explain it. The researcher is Mike Cleland. If you want to look into that, he actually has some YouTube videos mentioning this. He's also the guy with owls, with UFOs and aliens. He thinks that some cases of people seeing owls, really big owls, that's a screen memory of an alien. It's really a weird rabbit hole to go down, but there is something to be said about that. So I don't know.
So a couple thoughts I have is, do you think that since that encounter that you had when you were a small child might have altered your cells in such a way where it might have been passed down to your daughter as well too? And the reason why I say that is that when an astronaut goes into outer space, their cells are altered forever. Once you change into a different atmosphere, it's kind of like when you smoke a cigarette when you're a kid. You can never undo smoking a cigarette. It's already altered your cells, even though if you quit smoking right after that, it doesn't matter. Your cells are now altered forever. So I'm wondering if that was like a cell altering experience that was passed down, and that's why you and her are able to get like, these interactions or get these types of maybe glimpses of things as well too.
I will say science and certain scientists have already looked into that, and there is some correlation to that. I'm not going to go into too much depth, but if you want to go looking, Gary Nolan would be a person to look at. Him and Kit Green have done a study on this very thing. Uh, it wasn't open to the public, and I don't know if they're still doing it. And I probably shouldn't even be saying that much, but um, they've looked into that aspect. And yes, there's something to be said about that. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm special. I'm not. Um, it's just weird things have happened to myself and my daughter. I don't know why. I would also add that not until after my dad's death did I find out that he had had some experiences with what I would call the others, possibly. So there's that. I don't know. It tends to be a interesting point to look into, but I don't know how much like the Joe Q public wants to really look into that because it gets scary. I mean, if there's something that could take you, alter your DNA, and then you're forever changed, and you basically are a guinea pig to whatever these things are doing to you, that's going to scare the public. And I know for a fact the public is not ready. Like, I can't go to my next door neighbor and say, "Hey, I had these things happen to me." They're gonna just look at me funny. And it's the public's the same way. They're not ready for some of this. They're ready for, yes, people see lights in the sky. Yes, they're ready for a UAPTF report. It's cool to think that we're not alone, but they're right there in front of you and interacting with you, it's a different ball game. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. Like, I would really not have. I wish my daughter would never have had anything happen to her. It's
I
just.
I guess there's two realms of thought. Is one, it could be like the movie Knowing with Nicolas Cage, where they end up needing you for something, like to maybe carry on the human species, which is what that movie's about. Or two, I didn't even think about what you kind of brought to my attention was like, imagine if it's not a positive thing while they're communicating with you. Maybe it's a negative thing as well too. Maybe you've been chosen for could be the extinction of the human species. I'm not just being skeptical, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
that's I'm not like I said. Anybody out here that's listening to this, and I know you're trying to save face on the aspect of like anything you say, you understand. I get it. You're backing it up with stuff too. I think the important part is like you're just talking to me, so don't worry about anybody out there that could be listening to this. Um, I'm open minded as hell, like I said to you before we started the podcast. So I'm trying to get realms of thought here on the aspect of like when did the research start to take off for you? When did you really start diving deep into it and saying I'm going full hog? Was that on the aspect of like the UAP research stuff being released? Because that's when I saw a lot
No,
of okay,
no,
way
no,
before.
no, no. Oh, I started way before that.
Okay.
I started back and take it seriously in 2016, the year before we got the New York Times article. And once the New York Times article came out in December of 2017, it changed the face of research. I know there's some people out there that think this has all happened before, but I would argue, when did we get three declassified videos of UAP? Um, Never. So there's that. And I know some people would say the Tic Tac was out on like YouTube, or it was on certain places, and I would even confirm that because I got the Tic Tac video 2 weeks before it was released through a person I don't even know who they were. It was just some random person on Facebook that said, "Hey, I would think you would find this interesting." And like I said, I had it. Then he deleted his account, or whoever they were deleted their account. So I don't know what that was all about. But my research really took off in 2016. It was basically Tom DeLonge setting out to form To the Stars before it was, To the Stars Academy. And I looked into all that, and I was like, there's something here. Like, there's something going on. I've still to this day asked around the people, why was 2016 this jumping off point? I've been told through people that I trust, from different people also, that it turned out to be a perfect storm. It seemed the timing was right. There is no grand conspiracy of one person pulling the lever and that this is all coming out. It's just the timing was right. I don't know what that means. I've asked and I have not gotten answers. My gut is, I think we're going to a point on planet Earth where there's things happening that we cannot control, that maybe this information needs to come out in order to help, maybe, I wouldn't say save the planet, but maybe help facilitate, maybe to save the planet. And also, uh, maybe there's technologies out there that could help make that happen. However, maybe there's a group within the Pentagon or other agencies that don't want this out because they feel that it is so game changing that they just decided that they're going to hold on to it forever. They are not willing to part ways with the secret. I would argue you could still let go of certain things and not have national security be breached, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I was aware at one point that there was a religious group within the Pentagon that obviously worked very hard to discredit Lou Elizondo and try to mitigate his, what he was talking about. And they kind of failed. They've kind of been pushed to the side, which is good for people who want this subject to be brought forth to the public, because they were definitely uh, hindering all that, probably because they had messed with it in the late 80s, early 90s, and they had a bad encounter with what they thought was extraterrestrial, and it turned out not to be extraterrestrial. And it messed some scientists and some Air Force people up. And so they decided, we are no longer going to deal with that because it it destroyed people and it hurt people and maimed people. So we, therefore, nobody should be looking into this. And it turned out what they were messing with was not ET. It turned out to be, again, demonic. Uh, but that I don't think everything is demonic. I don't think what we're dealing with as a whole is demonic. I think we're dealing with a bunch of different things. I think we're dealing with ET, interdimensional, and then something else. I've been told in so many words that that's exactly what's happening. We're dealing with three things, two of which we have a decent understanding. We don't know everything. And the third thing, which is something sinister, we don't know a whole lot about, and there's nothing we could do about it. There's absolutely, we could do nothing about it.
I'm more of the realm of thought that if there is aliens, if just from my understanding, from what I've seen or what I've heard, I believe it's more about saving us rather than saving our planet because I think people have this unrealistic expectation that the Earth is going to blow up or die soon. And I think it's more about a reset that's possibly going to happen, kind of like knowing the planet was still there, but these aliens just pick these people up and then drop them back off after all the 2012 whatever damage was done. Mostly because this I've talked to many astrophysicists and people who study geography and they work with rocks all day, archaeologists. There's not a whole I mean there's climate change 100%, but it's more of a global greening, which is that the more carbon dioxide that we produce that's bad for our atmosphere. It's bad for human life, but it's great for plant life. So I look at the concept of I think this Earth's going to be around a lot longer than us. Now, is it going to be a reset where it goes back to an ice age or something? Sure. But I think this is the timeline where if we are created by aliens, we are part of whatever this space dust or whatever this chemical compound that could have been dropped down here. Um, I think this is the farthest they've ever seen. And the reason why they would make an appearance is because they do not want to see the reset again. It's probably because they've seen it happen so many other times. And I think that's more probable than anything. But I also think it's also some tech that the government has. Now, with a lot of these videos that come out, I think this is tech that they're keeping secret, but where did it originally come from is the true question. I think they've modified it and made it like an off-brand version of the main thing. And I think the main thing comes from somewhere else where we could talk about the alien stuff, and that's might be where it came from. We kind of just that's what we do. We hijack shit and we mess with it and turn it into our own thing to be able to use it on our side. And I think that's what they've been trying to keep secret. And at this point, if they're showing themselves, the government showing this tech, then that means something's coming or it's something else, or they have to make an appearance of like, hey, we have this because this is going to eventually come here.
Maybe. I mean, and you could find this with George Nampus said this a few times, where for whatever reason, every 8 to 10 years, they bring this, they bring the UFO program out and they try to see if our technology has caught up to what, supposedly Bob Lazar had been working on. And I get every indication that we're nowhere near what Bob was working on. We're nowhere near that at all. Like not even close. Like there's no way we could reproduce something like that. However, could we reproduce or could we make something anti-gravitic? Probably. Do we have something like that? Maybe.
Well, we have modern day
I
hovercrafts that are able to.
Yeah, but not like what not what the Tic Tac can do. We
Yeah.
can't do that. Um, I mean, you could take a look at what Mark McCandless had said with his buddy going to the air show where he was ushered away to another hangar, private hangar, where all these generals were saying we had this special event for not just him, but Congress people and some other political people. And it turned out, again, this is what Mark McCandless had said. I don't know whether this is entirely true, but there's people that tend to agree with what he said, that there's these ARVs, they're small, medium, and large, in this hangar that these generals were talking about. And that's something we developed. Again, anti-gravitic, probably. Could we make it? Probably. Do we have it? I don't know. I can tell you right now, we don't test that kind of stuff. If we do have that, we wouldn't test it against naval battle carrier groups. That's not how you test secret tech.
Well, have they? have they even tried to attack is the thing, though. That's the main thing, is when we say test against our own naval troops, is it really a test unless you're just showing your appearance to see if you can beat or match up or prove that you're faster and better? It doesn't describe how these things could know where they were going, their meeting points. And it does, unless they were predicting their thing, which means that they would have to be faster than us, which they are, but more of understanding of having knowledge from the inside of where they were going to meet at the exact destination. I haven't seen any attacks of alien crafts or any of these things that fly around. They seem to be very passive, because why would a something attack an ant? But also, why would the government attack their own troops?
Well, well, that's a debate for another day, but I will say that there has been cases where UFOs have attacked people. That's in Brazil. You have numerous instances where UFOs have come in and shot lights down or beams of whatever that is and hurt people. Um, I know of a case in Poland where a similar thing had happened. Um,
I'm specifically
but
talking about the Tic Tac.
yeah,
That
well,
that one's not an attack aggressive one, which to me just seemed like a show of like, we have this, and we're, or you're testing it. I mean, what's the best way to test it if you have something sitting in an underground hangar for so long that you're never able to show? You just have scientists working on it all day. Eventually, you got to be like, hey, we got to let this thing test out and see what it's going to do. I don't see them hiding it for so long.
I disagree because that's your most prized military possession. You just don't willy nilly have a exercise where, yes, I understand like the F-18 sometimes they're not even armed at all, but you don't risk an asset like that. If you only have one of it, you're not going to risk that asset to get hit or seen or stuff like that. You just don't. That's I've talked to enough military people who live in that world of the testing secret tech. That's not how you test secret tech. You don't go up against carrier battle group.
But
Um,
you go out in the middle of the night where people just see these lights moving at such angles. Like, this is Bob Lazar's account that it's not
yeah,
alien
yeah.
tech, it's just high advanced government gear. They were testing it though, and they got taken to a base, and that dude lost all credibility in every school that he's ever been into. He said he went to Harvard and got multiple degrees, and there's no record of even Harvard. They went into Harvard and took all his degrees away. So that would mean Bob Lazar would be lying. I mean, is it easier to have a display of advanced tech for everyone to see where they go, what the hell is that? And then you just toss out the thing that it's aliens, and then you have a bunch of people worried about aliens going down a rabbit hole for so long? That it's, I'm
Well,
not saying they don't exist. I'm saying is that that could be the example that they needed to go under, like under COVID, they threw the UAP bill out. Nobody gave a shit because of COVID. They used it under a bigger thing. So if you
mhm.
say we have this tech, but you're not saying it's your tech, everyone believes it's aliens. Yeah, it's aliens. We don't have that tech. There's two realms of thought when it comes to the government. There's people that think the government can never hide anything from other people, which is a goddamn lie, or the government isn't as smart as they're supposed to be, or as smart as we think they are. And I think they're 1,000 times smarter than we think they are. That's how all these random projects come out for so long.
I will tell you that if they want to keep a secret, they can keep a secret.
No, yeah, I know. And I think at this point in our history now, that's not even a secret. What, saying that you could just say it's aliens? What are the Tic Tac? It's an alien vehicle then. I don't think that's them though, because there's
Mhm,
no way that they would just start making an appearance now. I think this is a giant push for like the anti-hippie movement back in the day was people were infiltrating hippie protests and festivals and drugging these people with LSD, and they would break
mhm,
into shops and they would rob things. They would do all these crazy things and not remember it because they were on these psychedelic mind-bending drugs. And people
mhm,
said that's all hippies. Hippies are bad people. And then this became this push to outlaw all these drugs. I
mhm.
think that's what the, and I'm, like I said, I'm skepticizing here and I'm thinking now is that I think with these crafts, I think this is our tech that we've modified their tech. And I think we're using the disguise of alien thing so then we can get more budgeting when it comes to advancements into space. We're having this giant Space Force budget. We're having all these other types of things of being able to discover out there. I think that was just, it's easier to say it's aliens so people don't go, what's the government hiding? We still 2 years ago had a bunch of people storm Area 51 and it didn't happen. It got shut down last minute because Bob Lazar came out in an interview saying he was a liar in fear that he thought people were going to get shot, which they would have shot people. To think that they wouldn't have shot people.
Oh yeah, they will shoot people. They listen. They that whole test range, they'll shoot people. You go trying to try. And here's the other thing: like, I don't understand the whole, bum rush Area 51. They were nowhere near the base. That's still another 18, 20 miles away.
Well, the
Yeah,
best
you're not.
information they got was that there is an Area 51, which everyone's like, what? I never knew that even existed. It's like, well, these things come from somewhere, like not aliens. I'm talking about these theories, these conspiracy theories. They come from somewhere. There's riddled with truth. There was a joke for the longest time about Catholic priests, and then now all this stuff coming out about, oh my God, they actually do that? No shit. It comes from somewhere. So like I said, as much as movies, for instance, people have the idea that movies they show you a bunch of aliens because maybe it's a way to condition you in case we ever met aliens, you wouldn't freak the hell out. Maybe that's the thing with the tech or the tic tac that we saw. Maybe it's their tech we modified, and it's easier to say it's aliens, so you get the more budget funding. I don't think that's really the aliens, though. I don't see them just showing themselves out of all this. I picture them projecting like they do to certain key individuals like yourself or something that have
I-
these encounters.
I'll give you this,
Okay.
and you're gonna kind of be blown away. It's kind of gonna throw everything in what you just said out the window.
I wish you would have told me before.
It's okay. Um, so that same Kit Green and Dr. Nolan, I don't know if it's from audio from their experiencer study. However, there's an experiencer that recorded this conversation with Kit Green because she was upset at the way they weren't being transparent with her. So she recorded this conversation. She maintains that there is a underwater base just off the coast of Catalina Island, same area where Tic Tac is or was, and this base is it it's there, but it's kind of like a Skinwalker Ranch type of thing where it's like a thin veil where it opens up and their stuff can come out. It's like a portal. And she claims that there's a portal ET base in this area underwater. I find that very interesting. Also, geomagnetically, that area is really strange for whatever reason. The way the makeup of the rock formations under the seafloor just for some reason attract this phenomenon, and I don't know why. So I'm skeptical of its our tech being reverse engineered that we were testing over there. I don't think so. I genuinely think that this is something else in that instant. There's other places here in the U.S. and around the world that are hotbeds for whatever reason. Here in my area, Michigan, we have the Great Lakes. Lake Huron, Lake Superior are big time with UFO stories over the years, where they're coming out of the lake or going into the lake. Um, that's interesting. And again, it goes back to the geology makeup of what makes up that lake bed. Um, one theory is that they're basically powering up their craft or refueling their craft with the whatever makeup of the floor of the whether it be the ocean and or inland lake, Great Lakes. That's one theory I've heard. Um, I would say that I think there should be some research done in that direction. However, that takes a lot of money, and you got to have a boat, and you got to kind of know where to look and go. So I don't know if that's going to happen. I know there was some research organizations that were starting to go in that direction, but I don't know if that is a place they're going to actually look into. I don't know, but I just wanted to give you that little antidote to kind of throw out the human possibility. I just don't. I again speaking to all the people that I've spoken to over the years, that's not how you test stuff. It just isn't. And and even Sagar Argenti from the formerly of the Hill, but now of Rising, he will say there's easier ways to get funding for the military or the military industrial complex than saying it's aliens or whatever. There's easier ways to get funding. You could say there's a new war on terror. I don't see there's going to be a new war on aliens. I don't think they even want to acknowledge. In fact, I know they don't want to acknowledge that there could be something else. They right now they view it as a threat because it is a threat. If you could turn on nukes and turn them off, which they have done in the past, that is a threat. I'm sorry,
Well,
but it is. And if you're
what's
taking people against their will with abductions, and they're not physical, they're physical happenings, that's not cool, right? So that's a national security threat. You have to view it as a threat.
what's better to spread a war on terror by broadcasting it for everybody or by having a bunch of people now starting to look at these UAP reports and get interested in the concept of aliens, considering that for so long nobody gave a shit?
I would disagree. I think that we've always given a shit. I think that
Certain people did, but this is the first time ever that most of the public has the opportunity to actually dive into these UAP reports and really see a conclusion. The first time the government has ever really truly addressed that, besides maybe a couple of Reagan speeches, the clips everyone always says about the. I don't think we're the only one alone in the universe, and at this time, I think this would unite a nation or unite the world if they found out something was bigger than them. This is the first time like the government has openly said, "Here's the," and that all came from some dude in a press conference in Congress in like 2020 talking about that you should release some documents on these unidentified aerial phenomena. And now we're seeing a rebranding of a name. Is that a way better sales pitch to do it that way and slowly brainwash people? I'm not saying these people are wrong. I'm saying is that your reality is off the basis of what you've seen and what you've found out. I could tell you and I could sit you down with a flat earther that'll tell you 100% that the earth is flat. Now I know of the belief, and I've talked to astrophysicists that'll say it's not. But then, how do you explain if there's credible reports from like Bob Lazo, our top name that Jeremy Corbell did a documentary about, talks about standing out in front of a truck with somebody at night and watching these white lights and these crafts that the government has exploring this tech? Is it possible that maybe our brain tries to fill in, and this is the issue with eye count or eyewitness encounters, is that it's very, very hard unless you've been through a traumatic experience, such as going to war, to be able to recount everything that you've seen firsthand accounts. Now, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate in this session. Is I think it's a government way of getting I don't, maybe it's not, I have no clue, but there are secret methods of why are they taking this infrastructure bill? Why does it, the whole front of the bill, say that it's going to be used for roadways, but if you look, there's less than 4% that's being used for roadways out of the 11 something $0.3 trillion that they're getting. They're tapping into a 1.65 billion untapped COVID pandemic money that is just sitting there, and nobody's addressing those types of things. So what I'm saying is it's all about the wording that they use. It's all about what you see and what you think. It's a misinformation thing. And I don't think this is, no, this is not our fault. This is not UFO groups. This isn't any of those anybody's fault. This isn't even news's fault. It's the fact that everyone has been trying to get the top story, and the best way to get the top story is by you hear something, you run with it ahead of time to be above your competitors. And I think so much with this topic and every topic in general in the world has been littered with shit. It's just piles on top of piles on top of piles on top. Even with Fauci, how many times have we watched that motherfucker do spins around on everything he said? Every single time, and he keeps going back and forth. It's because the answer is probably in the past, but we've piled so much shit on top of it. It's about finding a way to dig back to it without coming out and saying, "Hey, we're wrong," because then you lose trust in people at that point.
See, I'm not a fan of saying every government official or non-official who works in maybe as a civilian within government is a boogeyman.
I don't
Like
think they
that's the
are.
old.
You're unintentionally a boogeyman. We're unintentionally, in so many ways, probably running with wrong information at some point. How many people said it didn't
Of
come from
course,
the
we're,
lab? And
but
then now there's this theory that, oh, yeah, it actually did come from the lab. And the people that spoke out to the public and told a bunch of people that it didn't, turned out they had funding with China. You start to realize, like, I don't think we're like all like political pundits or secret sleeper agents. I don't think that. I don't think anybody, I think, oh god damn it, this is gonna be a hard one because when it gets me about the government, I start freaking losing my goddamn mind. With people, for instance, I think it's just all about the perception that they display to you. And I don't think you're like a secret spy. I don't think any of that. I don't think people and the politicians are intentionally spreading misinformation. I think it's about a concept of you hear something, most people see the headline, less people see the retraction. You know what I mean? Like there's a
mm,
comedian who did a voiceover of the Tokyo Olympics saying that this broadcaster, he's a comedian, so he did it in like the worst way possible, talking about afterwards they're going to chop all these people up and make sushi.
Mhm.
CNN, Fox News, all these major corporations, even World Star Hip Hop, that used to be a fighting network, actually used it. They're actually a news source, like TikTok is news now sometimes.
Mhm.
They ran with it. And then eventually, 3 days later, they found the comedian's original post and said, made a retraction. Not everyone saw that retraction. There was a lot of people fighting about the fact that this is a racist broadcaster that needs to be fired. That's what I think, though. I think we run with something because it's news, it's money, because clicks is everything. And sadly, you start getting your reality distorted. I don't think that is with a lot of people that believe in the alien things at all. I think when it comes to the government thing, I think people are unintentionally kind of like Scientology. Talk to a Scientologist, man. They're not bad people. Some of them are not, but they believe in something. And that belief or what they've seen or what they've been shown, they didn't know the internet existed, man. Google, they click
Mhm.
over, they're like, what the hell's Google? Because their internet's locked. How much of our information on our computers have been locked down by a lot of shit? You're not able to look at these certain things. You have to go to off-brand websites or things where they can't track you, very sketchy corners. The common public doesn't do that. Normal people don't do that. You have to be searching for something. If I go to the Freedom of Information Act website, I have to type in exactly what I'm looking for. I can't just
Mhm.
type in JFK. I can't just type in Wuhan. I can't just type in 9/11. I have to be
Mhm.
the exact date, times, and names, or it's not going to give me any search results, which makes me think, oh, okay, maybe this isn't real if I get no search results. But then it's that one letter change. And next, you get a bunch of articles and stuff like that. It's all government documented. That's what I think is that it's either the real information is very hard to find or there's just a bunch of littered stuff out there. Why haven't they killed Alex Jones? You labeled him as a conspiracy guy. Nobody's going to give a shit about what he says, even though he's got a bunch of shit right.
I will just say that there is good people within government. I think that,
For sure.
like I said, there probably, in all likelihood, this is my current theory that I've ran with or presented to other colleagues of mine and people who are within government is there was a rogue element within the government that has oversight of this topic, okay, for lack of a better term. They run the UFO program. They've taken it away from the government and put it in the private sector. So you can't FOI it. So it's within certain military industrial complex. I'm not going to name names, but certain ones that people, they could look up on the internet. Um, they have this project now or program, and they've decided to lock it away because of, again, they view it as a national security issue where the technology represents something so changing that would change society so dramatically that it would present a lot of issues that they're not ready to deal with yet. Two, you have both former and current military and civilian people within the government who just view it as, like I said, demonic. Therefore, it's a religious thing. Therefore, we can't touch it because, like I said, the late 80s, early 90s, with Collins Elite, they got fucked over because they messed with something that they shouldn't have been messing with, and they had bad consequences come out from that. So so you have two groups: the military industrial complex, some bad actors within the DoD or government itself, and also the other thing that not a lot of people talk about is this information is stovepiped so much that the NSA maybe has a little bit, the CIA has a little bit, the DoD has a little bit, the DIA has a little bit, but they don't talk to each other. It's like a 9/11 all over again. So these agencies aren't talking, they're not sharing with that information with each other. Also, you have people who are not cleared to hear that information. So maybe they don't have the security clearance to hear that, or they don't have a need to know. Like the Wilson memo. You had Emma Wilson, who's a J2. He was told he did not have a need to know about that UFO program, and the project managers for this secret program said, we feel kind of sorry for you. Well, they told him some stuff, but they didn't tell him everything. And they denied him access. And then when he said, no, I want access and I'm going to fight for access, they said, if you continue to get irate and you bitch about it or you make us think about it, we will get somebody to knock you down to a 2-star general. We'll take away your retirement and basically we'll bury you.
Yeah.
So
we're saying the same thing. I'm not understanding what was. I guess I might have been, you might have misinterpreted me a little bit. I'm kind of talking about on the concept of like, when I say, I think people are subconsciously or kind of like, they don't know what's going on. It's either you don't want to know or you just like, there's the fear aspect of things, but it's kind of like Chick-fil-A, for instance. Chick-fil-A openly talked about this transgender ban, and they got a lot of shit recently on Twitter a couple months back about the whole transgender bill that was being passed. That doesn't mean everybody that works at Chick-fil-A is a transgender hater. No, it's just the company. It's not them. So you don't hate the Chick-fil-A people. Same reason why you don't hate government people for some secret stuff that's going on way above their pay grade, way above their head. That's what I'm trying to say, is that there's other shit like your house, for instance. Imagine if some person just came in your house, knocked on the side of a door, spun something, and then a fucking wall opened up. You're like, what the fuck is that? I've lived here my whole life. That's new. And it's like, yeah, well, I was here when we actually built this place and you kind of are now renting it. You didn't know that was there. That's the whole perspective. Yeah. The hidden thing is what I'm talking about. Hitting that. I think the government is hiding all that shit.
Of course they are. And they will never come clean. I honestly don't think they'll come clean. I really don't.
Never.
They'll go to a certain point and then they'll stop.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. The other part of it is, I know because I deal with a lot of journalists, mainstream journalists on this, CNN, The Hill, who else? The Washington Post.
Who from CNN? I know a couple people from there.
He's a digital content creator. I can't think of his name right now. I'll share that link with you later. But
yeah.
He wants to do stories on it, but because he's not well versed in it, you kind of have to hold his hand. And when you ask them to do homework or a little bit of reading, it's like pulling teeth. I find it's really weird. They want the clicks, they want the views on the website because, Alien does drive traffic. But at the same time, they're not willing to put in the work. Like I've fought so many times with various journalists or reporters to get them to cover this or start to do a little bit of research, and it's like pulling teeth.
I have a couple CNN people that follow my show, and I always wonder why they never covered Epstein for more than like 3 days. It should have been way longer than that. It should have been way deeper than that, because now there's all these side articles are coming out about it. None of them are posted by these sites, and that's because everyone had a biased thing. Everyone, I think that he had dirt on a lot of people, which is like with the government, you fail up. So if you take the blame for something, you actually get promoted. That's the weirdest shit about the government. That's why Bohemian Grove, you remember that video that Alex Jones came out with, all these government politicians. Epstein had multiple different flights, and they find all this pedophilia ring and stuff goes on. A lot of people wanted him dead. So that's why his story didn't run for that long. And that's why it's still being talked about. It's going to end up being like a 9/11. 9/11, closed door testimonies, a bunch of sketchy stuff, all this. I read the commission report. I did a 6-hour episode on 9/11. There's a lot of shit where it's like you didn't be honest with anybody and you've let it go on this long, where this is how it's a conspiracy. This is how people bring up conspiracies about it. It was a bomb. It was all this type of stuff, because you're not being honest. That's what they do. You'll never get the full information on the UFO stuff. If there's UFO stuff, they'll call it UAP. They'll twist the words around. They'll hide information from you, and you'll end up finding it 20 years later. Why is JFK still a conspiracy? The magic bullet theory, you got to be filled with rocks if you believe a magic bullet theory. That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And I've studied the JFK thing as well, too. There's multiple factors. I think it's a bunch of things going wrong at once. But what's the core main mess up? Why did the same psychiatrist or whoever that examined the guy who shot JFK was the same one for Charles Manson? And now there's a book you should read. It's by Tom O'Neill. I could send you the podcast episode, but he spent 20 years researching Charles Manson, found out that the government was giving Charles Manson drugs to do the acts that he was doing.
Yeah. Listen, the government does a lot of shit.
They're fucking nuts. That doesn't mean I hate everybody in the government, though. I don't like that Illuminati shit.
But with the UFO subject, I don't think it's it's as ingrained with conspiracy as people would suggest. I just don't see it.
I think they're
Just
using it as a false flag, man. I think they're discrediting it.
no, 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 no. They're not. It would be the hard. There's too many moving parts with that. How would you hoax an alien attack on a mass scale for the
They're not
U.S.?
hoping for an attack. They're just if you just put something in the sky and
No,
shows everybody this thing, then people are be like, we need to get funding in case that thing turns violent. No shit, thank you. And then you just go off with that's what I'm talking about. I don't see,
I don't see.
I don't know the you have to send me these attack reports. I have never heard of an attack report. Even with Travis Walton,
No,
his wasn't an attack. It was just a blue light that you lost time.
look up the 1986 Ukrainian. Well, it's Ukraine now. It was this old Soviet Union. The UFO turned on the nuke and had it ready to launch. Like it was moments away from launching, and then it shut it down. That's to me, that is a threat. And the fact that here in the U.S. they took down, nuclear weapons, missiles. That's a threat. You shouldn't be able to do that. I can tell you straight up, like I know Rendlesham in 1980, in December of 1980, Colonel Halt maintains that they shot lasers into the. Now, there. By the way, this is not widely known. In Rendlesham during that time, we had signed a treaty with England that we would not have nuclear weapons on that base. Well, guess what? We broke that treaty. We had a lot of nuclear weapons on that base because it was forward deployed. Because if the Russians were to get a sneak attack on the U.S., we could strike back with our base there in Rendlesham and launch A-10s and what other aircraft? F-111s there, and go to the Soviet Union and basically kill tanks and detonate nuclear weapons from F-111s. But people didn't know that, and a lot of people had signed security oaths never to disclose that. It wasn't until I want to say 2013 or 2014 before Colonel Halt finally came forward and said, "Yes, we did keep nuclear weapons there." I
This
mean,
is like this is deja vu. It's like when Fauci was like, we did not practice what is it? What is it? Gain of function research does not mean testing whatever, and then that is what it means. And now they realized he lied, and he's going to be on trial in Congress, which is like, why is everyone trusting their government so much? Jeez, am I the only one? Did I take the wrong pill when they offered it in the Matrix, and I just fucking woke up and started realizing that I don't have any say in my life ever? Like, I don't know.
well, I wouldn't say that. I think you do. It's just I don't go looking for conspiracy around every corner. And now,
Is that a
obviously,
conspiracy?
JFK. Well,
The
it's
Wuhan lab is
dangerous.
a conspiracy. They're looking into it,
Well,
bro. The Hill publishes articles about that. You had
no,
to see that. Okay.
listen. Listen. I'm well aware. Okay, I'm well aware, and I worked with infectious diseases for 10 years of my life, so I know
Do
this
you want
pretty
me to do the
well.
Jimmy Stewart thing where I just go, or
No,
John Stewart, or the name of the fucking virus, just go
yeah,
ham
no,
on it? Okay. I can
no, but
family feud it.
no. Getting back to the UFO stuff. I mean,
Damn it. Go
I
back to
just
the lab.
what lab? No, 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 no.
Ah,
I, I don't know. I mean, what other questions do you have? I mean,
that's all I got.
all right.
You don't wait. So do you think they're hostile or you think it's not? I had a lot of fun, dude. I really appreciate I would love to have
No,
you back
I
on,
do think
Chris.
they're hostile. I
Okay.
do, in certain cases, I do think they're hostile. I mean, if you could take somebody against their will, that's not cool. Also, they've shown some intent to, mess with nukes a lot, actually. Um, what else? I mean, again, if here's another thing. Now I'm going to throw this out, and people may actually hate me for this, but
Don't worry about people. Just worry about
have
me.
you ever read slide 9 of the ATIP program?
No.
Slide 9, where basically it says that the ATIP concluded that these things can influence influencers, meaning they could basically thought control people.
Oh yeah, like projecting.
Yeah, well, kind of. Now, what's happening in Cuba? What's happened in, I guess, some consulates in overseas? I forget where, but I just know for sure Cuba, where Havana syndrome is happening, where these microwaves are messing with these diplomats and these spies. Who's to say that's not Russia, or it's not China, or it's not Iran or North Korea or whatever boogeyman you're coming up with this week, but it's the others, and they're messing with diplomats. Now, some people would say, well, that doesn't make sense. It may not make sense, but maybe it's one way of messing with people and kind of keeping the government to do what you want them to, basically get them to do what you want, is to show that we can have this show of force. We're not going to like fry somebody with a laser beam, but we'll fry them with this microwave technology that we have, and it messes with their mind and it gives them vertigo and makes them puke and every other thing. I'm just saying it's an interesting thing that, again, why do you think the DIA went to Skinwalker Ranch? Because they wanted to weaponize that, because they realized that we don't have any defense against this. But not only that, but we'd love to weaponize it, and it would be free. We wouldn't even have to spend money on it, because you could harness that, whatever this phenomenon is. If you could figure out how to harness it, use it against the adversary, that's a really great weapon, because it doesn't require any money. It doesn't require soldiers. You could just do it. It's so, again, I'm not sold that it's not a threat. I'm just not. And I understand Travis Walton's a great case where, yes, he was taken and he feels that they healed him and he was missing for 5 days. I would argue the government was very interested in his case from the get-go. If you ever get the documentary by Jill Stein about Travis Walton's encounter with Peter Robbins, who's the co-producer, I want to say, they talk about when the other 5 loggers were showing the sheriff and all these search people where they had, where Travis went missing, there was a group of people that they didn't know who they were, and they were government types with Geiger counters, and they just were not, like, they weren't supposed to be there. Even the sheriff didn't know who the hell they were. But that never gets talked about, and that's in that documentary. So I would implore you to look at that.
You're
I'll
gonna have
send
to,
you the link.
yeah, you're gonna have to send me the links. Let me do my research, then I'm gonna have you back on, and then we can
All
talk
right.
more because I don't
All
know
right.
any of this stuff. As soon as you said China, Russia, and then you said boogeyman, I was like, China's a boogeyman. What the fuck? I'm all into the government shit, so you lost me. I'm out in the field somewhere, a left field. Damn, I'm really thinking about the government now. Come on, I gotta go back to work. Chris, dude, I really, really appreciate you doing my podcast. Like I said, I'd like to have you back on again. You got to send me some of those links so I can actually look into it and brush up a little bit too. Because like I said, I'm open minded, so I want to see some projects, some names. I want to see all this type of stuff too. We can discuss off air and everything. But
All
where
right.
can people find you? Your links, is it just your Twitter? Do you got other sites that
Just
you can
no,
promote?
just Twitter. That's
Okay.
it. Yep.
I'll make sure I link that in the description. Is there anything you want to let people know out there listening before we wrap up the show?
Have a great day.
So good. That's the first one I've had out of 900 episodes. Somebody saying, have a great day. I like that.